We began this series in 1938 when a little theatre group called the Rover Players was formed in Coventry. These aspiring thespians made their way to Kenilworth a couple of years later with the hopes of building a theatre to call home. A theatre they found in an old tannery barn, which they christened the Talisman. While the original theatre was demolished in 1964, a new Talisman was built on Barrow Road a mere 5 years later. The Talisman that, as you can clearly see, stands to this day. And now, it's time to bring everything full circle. This episode will bring us to the present, examining the final steps that brought the Talisman to where it is today, and reflect on what has always made the theatre so special. We left the last episode in 1992, the Talisman's 50th anniversary. It was a time of celebrating the achievements of the past, as all anniversaries should be. But the 90s were a time for thinking ahead. A new millennium was on the horizon. It was an exciting time for all, and the Talisman had to be prepared for the future. This marked the start of something of a modern wave for the theatre. With the future slowly but surely closing in, the Talisman focused on being ready for when it arrived. You can see this mindset reflected in the lineup of productions in 1993. With the exception of the pantomime, every show was of a play never seen before at the Talisman, even an amateur premiere of Shadowlands. This push for new productions wasn't always met with financial success, but it did satisfy the theatre's itch for new artistic endeavours. Along with this push for new shows were life improvements across the theatre, such as a humidifier and coffee machine in the dressing room and a heater in the foyer. The Talisman's technical team were treated with better light and sound equipment. Even the stage itself was renewed, as nearly 30 years' worth of pacing, performing and pantomiming was starting to take their toll.
It obviously gets painted for every set, same as the flats do. You can see all around you. These flats will probably last for anything from 10 to 15 years. And then they get the larger ones, say a 5-foot flat, will be so heavy that you can't move it on your own anymore. It takes 2 people to move it because there's how many, 50, 60 coats of emulsion paint on it. So, and the same with the stage. The stage eventually gives up and you have to recover the whole stage again.
In 1996, with the next century creeping into view, greater focus was placed on effective planning and training. One of these efforts was the director of productions having a helping hand in choosing productions from a play-reading ancillary team. And yes, that does indeed stand for Pratt. The Talisman never did take themselves 100% seriously. On a more serious note, there were concerns of members in new positions being unsure of what to do, and of new members feeling alienated upon joining the Talisman. To combat these anxieties, job descriptions were handed out to any member taking on a new role in the theatre, and old members were instructed to make sure new members felt welcome. Another part of this forward-looking philosophy was the Talisman student group taking on a new form. The student group was a long-standing tradition of the theatre, but in the annual meeting of '94, the student group was declared dead due to lack of help. Exactly what led to this decision is difficult to pin down, but it was soon revived in '97 with a new name, the Talisman Youth Theatre.
Just to see the enjoyment that they got out of it was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole purpose of it.
Yeah.
Youth theatre is meant to be a community youth theatre. It's not, you don't have to come along and do an audition to get in. It's just if they enjoy it and have the enthusiasm to be able to join a group and do drama, then as long as they had all those, it didn't really matter.
For me it was like a sense of community because I was quite young, so it was initially a sense of community. And then, of course, my mum was obviously a big part of the Talisman as well, so it was sort of just my stepping stone into acting and the Talisman theatre.
Yeah, I was super similar. Both my parents were very involved with the Talisman and still are, so I kind of got into it that way. And then it was just something to do, somewhere to go and meet people. Something other than school, you know, when you're that young, it's really nice to have something like that to do.
And it is lovely to see the youngsters develop and from one year to the next, and how their amazing imaginations run wild and can produce these things. And I was always very proud of them. I don't know about you, but I was always so proud of everything they did, because it came from almost nowhere, wasn't it, to something, to a show, which was just fab.
Yeah, I think one of the things was that, and I know we said this between us quite a few times, you'd do all the rehearsals and they'd never quite give their all at rehearsals, but you knew they'd do it on the night, and you'd stand there on the first night and they'd suddenly do everything that you'd asked them to do but had never quite managed to do in rehearsals, and it would suddenly all come together, and it's just an amazing feeling.
It is a magical moment. It is an absolute magical moment.
Yeah. Having worked with them then for the ensuing years on plays, it was just lovely to see them growing up and changing and developing and taking on different roles. So
and becoming lovely adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the youth theatre, towards the latter years that I was in it, they merged into one big show. And there was a really big range of skill from, of course, all of the newcomers and the younger kids. But that's natural because of the, of course, different amount of time that they've been acting. But then as you move to main stage productions, all of the stuff that you'd be better at in the youth theatre, you're now a complete newbie with all of the older people, because it is that they have so much more experience than you do.
Yeah, it can definitely be quite overwhelming, which is why it's great being in the youth theatre, especially from a young age like we were. You kind of are bound to know someone in the cast. You know, you'll have been out for a meal with someone in the cast. Your parents will know someone, or you'll just have talked to them in the interval of a show, which makes the whole process so much easier, because it can be, you know, my mum's not going to be in every show I do. So it's nice to know other people and know that, you know, you've got support from someone in the cast.
97 also saw the Talisman used by the BBC to film a collection of scenes for a Keeping Up Appearances special compilation episode for American audiences.
The phone went at home one day, and knowing that people knew that, you know, we all liked keeping up appearances on the television, and this voice at the end said, "Is that Mr. Duckham?" I said yes. He said, "This is Harold Snowd." And I thought, oh hello, who's having a joke? You see, somebody's impersonating. Harold Snow was the producer of the TV series. And I said, oh yes, who is it? Blah, blah. And he said, no, it's Harold Snow. And I realised then it was. And he asked if the Talisman Theatre would be available to build a set and to film Onslow and Daisy, wasn't it? The two old characters in bed looking through a family album, a photograph album, and then that would then clip into various sequences from the series that had already been done. So I met him in the car park here and showed him the theatre, and they hired the theatre.
It's not as long-lasting as the youth theatre, but it's still remarkable to know that the Talisman stage has, in a way, crossed the ocean to the new world. Quite an achievement to bookend this chapter of the Talisman story. The Talisman jumped headfirst into the new millennium with a computerised box office system and a website for booking tickets to upcoming productions. We've come a long way since the Tannery Barn turned makeshift theatre in 1942. Speaking of which, the Talisman's 60th birthday came just 2 years later, and the show to mark the occasion is one of their most ambitious to date, A Kenilworth Story, which took audience members through the theatre's hometown, and I'm not speaking metaphorically.
Yeah, so this was a play written by members of the theatre who remembered, wartime and changes in Kenilworth, and it was a very exciting project because they wanted to take it out kind of into the community, into Kenilworth, to sort of echo some of the history of Kenilworth, I suppose. And I can remember the lead up to it. There was a real buzz, and I don't know if you remember that. There was a real buzz around the theatre because of the 60th anniversary and the fact that people from the theatre had come up with this idea, and it was drawing on people's actual real memories. So it wasn't just like a story that somebody'd written. It was actually drawing on people's memories and their family history and everything. So it had something really tangible to hold on to. It wasn't just like putting a play on. It was something that showed the theatre's history. It showed the history of Kenilworth. It showed some of the characters that had, you know, actually lived and grown up in Kenilworth. So it was a very personal thing, really, I suppose, to the theatre membership. And you started, I'm just trying to think now, you started off here and then you walked through the town. I know there was one up by the wall by the lake. There was one in the bowl in Abbey Fields.
Oh, yes.
There was one by the ford, which that was the scene I wasn't in. And I know the last one was back here. And it was a logistical nightmare in a way, because you had to transport not just the actors, but all the audience as well with you.
Yeah.
It was very, you know, the weather dependent, and we were very lucky with the weather. I think we only had one night where it rained a little bit, but it was nothing much. And of course we also had the wonderful Jaguar Land Rover brass, or part of the brass band with us, which was, I think, the first time they'd worked with us, and then they came back again for Brastoff.
Yeah, Brastoff.
So that was the start of, you know, a bit of a relationship with them. I think for me, being a huge show off in terms of, you know, thinking, oh, I'm really enjoying this, you know, but actually just leaving the theatre in costume, walking along with the audience and taking them with you, and other passers-by thinking, you know, looking and going, oh, you know, what's all this? It was just a great feeling, you know, something exciting was happening in the town, and people would, you know, they obviously hadn't bought tickets, but people would just come and watch from afar in Abbey Fields, and you really felt like you were taking the theatre out to the whole of Kenilworth. Yeah. But it was brilliant, and I think it's probably time we did something like it again.
Yes, it probably is actually.
You know, it would be a really good thing.
Well, it's our 80th next year.
Yeah. It would be, you know, I think, especially now, you know, we've had a COVID year, people are more outdoor, you know, they're more used to being outside, doing things outside. I think it would be a great thing to do again.
The Talisman's momentum of self-improvement didn't slow down once they reached the 21st century. If anything, it accelerated, as there was a drive to make the Talisman a suitably modern theatre. The new box office system and website, as it turned out, were just the start. Almost every area of the theatre saw some kind of refurbishment or updated equipment. More seats were added to the auditorium, the backstage was given a new scene dock and new tools to help with set building. And, following a small fire caused by one of the dimmers in 2003, a new lighting system was installed for £10,000 in 2004. 2004 was a big year for the Talisman in other ways. A business committee was established, which would give further momentum to the Talisman's growth in the years to come.
Yeah, it started off, there was a team of 5 of us. The theatre was starting to show its age, and we needed to have some sort of a plan to say, okay, what should we be aiming for in the future? And we spent 6 months interviewing each and every departmental manager, saying, what are your needs, what do you like, what do you not like? It's a basic SWOT analysis to find out where our strengths were, weaknesses were, what are the things we need to do for the future. At the same time, I had a chat with Ian Roberts, who was chairman for a long time at the theatre, probably the longest standing chairman we had. And he said to me that the theatre had been approached about 5 years previously by the district council, and asked if we'd consider a move. And we'd said no. Now the theatre, once we started to map out what was needed here, it was a huge amount of money and a lot of work, and we didn't know whether we could make it work or not. But if the council were interested in working with us to develop a plan for a new theatre, we were happy to talk to them. So I approached Chris Elliott of the Warwick District Council, had a preliminary meeting with him to talk things through, and they were very keen to put Talisman in basically as a focal point within the town centre. We developed probably 30 plans in different positions, and it was going well, but it was a long process, went on for years. In the end, I think we were talking to them for the best part of 14, 15 years. And the one problem we kept coming back to was bridging the financial gap between what we'd got and what it was going to require for a new theatre. So we again, fair warning, we said, listen, we really do have to move on. We can't keep dragging over the coals here. We've got to find a solution. And we said, we need to find a solution in 12 months. It wasn't coming. We said, listen, we can give you another 6, another 12. And we did give them every opportunity to try to find a solution and bridge the gap. It wasn't going to happen, and the exec made the difficult decision to say, right, that's it, we're cutting. We sent them a very pleasant message to say, we've done everything we possibly could. And we did, and we bent over backwards. We couldn't have been more cooperative, but we've got to start work here now.
2007 was another big year for the theatre. This was the Talisman's 65th birthday, and the show to mark this occasion was Oliver. It was in stark contrast to Stephen Duckham's usual strategy of avoiding well-known musicals, but the deviations seemed to pay off.
I thought it was a bit big for this theatre, because knowing the size of the stage and what a show like Oliver entails, I was a bit wary about whether we'd be able to do it justice. But you really wanted to do it, didn't you?
Well, I was desperate to play Fagin, really. That was the main thing. I did audition. I wasn't given the part, but
you did it democratically.
I did definitely want to play Fagin, and I think, we have done other more popular musicals.
Yeah.
That's not been our sort of stock in trade. We have almost always done niche musicals which fit the size of this theatre. But actually, I think it's fair to say that Oliver is a very adaptable piece in many ways. It worked very well on this stage, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, it gave it an intimacy that you probably don't get in a much bigger theatre.
Once we'd said yes, and yes, we were badgered by quite a few parents from the youth theatre.
I wouldn't like to comment.
but it was great, because again we were able to use the youth theatre, weren't we? And
yes.
And that's all good for the theatre. But I think what really convinced me that we could do it was when we got John Ellum on board, and he designed a fabulous set, which was so adaptable, and I could see the show then working here.
Yeah, it was a fairly basic set, really. There was a backcloth, and then there was a bridge. There was a revolving truck which came in from the wings, and that was it, really. It was a very big cast, obviously, and it had to be made safe for the number of children that were there running across this bridge, not falling off it or anything, breaking their necks.
And we had a fabulous time. And I think I think I'm right in saying it's the first time we've done a musical that ran for 2 weeks and completely sold out. We hadn't got a spare seat.
The Talisman also implemented bare bones productions this year, shows on the main stage that would put less stress on the technical members of the theatre without compromising the number of productions. In fact, it seemed to allow the Talisman to do more. 2008 was a busy year with 13 productions, a rarity for the theatre by this point. Among this substantial list was the latest, and so far last, instalment of the Palace of Varieties. 2009 saw more success for the theatre, with popular shows like Fawlty Towers, The Full Monty, and The Complete Works of Willem Shakespeare, abridged. That's quite a mouthful. The 2000s was certainly busy, but also very rewarding, with 2 acclaimed birthday productions, 6 NODA awards, and no shortage of improvement and innovations across the Talisman's technical and creative areas. With all this success on their back, the Talisman entered the 2010s with confidence. But the next decade wouldn't be as kind as the last. – 2012 saw the 70th anniversary of the Talisman. But while there were the traditional celebrations and a refurbishment of the bar and foyer, there were shadows hovering over the proceedings. The Talisman was seeing financial difficulties, in large part due to the economic struggles the entire country was going through, and there was often a shortage of members for the various positions required for the theatre's upkeep. There was even some consideration of removing the panto from the production lineup. The mood must have been truly dire for such a suggestion to be made. There were some positive highlights in these difficult times. The Talisman became an approved body of persons, which meant the theatre no longer had to pay for individual licences for child actors, a minor relief for the theatre come panto season. And there was another cause for celebration in 2014, when John Ellum designed his 100th set for the Talisman.
You start off with reading the script. A producer will give you a script and make sure you're interested in doing it in the first place. And you give them a sort of outline of what you have in mind, and they say, oh yes, that'll do, or no, that's not very good, find something else. And then next stage is you look at the plan of the Talisman stage, which is something like this. This is a scale plan, this is 1/24th scale. So you work out your design. This particular one is for one I'm doing next year, and it has a revolve in it, which is this piece here, which turns around, and a raked stage here. Quite a complicated set. So the idea of making a model is that you can show the actors, of course, and the director what the thing's going to look like before they move on to it, and also give the set builders a good idea of what they're going to be in for. This is the model which I build. Not everybody builds a model. You don't have to build a model. You can have sketches if you want to, but obviously it's much more useful to have a scale model, and the builders can then come up with their tapes and make sure everything's exactly right. This is the revolve, which eventually turns round at some stage and becomes a sitting room. Then there's a staircase leading to a bedroom and a working window at the back. So that's quite a complex set. A lot of them are much simpler than that. Well, I'm up to 114 at the moment, and long may it continue. I'm quite happy working there. This is my Keep Fit class every morning.
But the move of this decade was one of, not desperation, but certainly caution. Over the next few years, efforts were taken to lessen the workload across the theatre. They went from 11 yearly productions to 10. Bare bones productions fizzled out, the last of them being in 2012, and it was decided the studio performances would be less frequent as well. It was also decided to hand the role of director of productions over to 2 members instead of 1.
What you need to remember is that actually there is only one artistic director post, and that's to do with the constitution. You can't currently have 2 people in the post, but when I was going to say when I was voted in, but when I agreed to do it effectively, because nobody else wanted to do it, I said I would only do it if I could co-work with Stephen, because I think we've always felt that it was in many ways too much for one person, and you don't get variety.
No,
if you're not careful, you get a bit stuck in your own way of thinking, the stuff you like, and you need to broaden it out. And having 2 people shares the load, gives you much more potential variety in terms of the plays that you choose.
As the decade drew to a close, these measures seemed to calm the economic anxieties of the Talisman, so they turned their attention to another extension that would give the theatre a major overhaul. This would be the first major extension for the theatre since the studio was built back in the 1970s.
The whole of the ground floor, certainly from an audience point of view, will be completely revitalised. Much bigger bar area, reception area, box office. We're doing new toilets, there'll be new changing rooms. That's a sort of bigger and better on the ground floor. It's the studio that will be where we are right now. This will be the real opportunity of turning this into a much more adaptable studio where we can do regular artistic performances of a wide variety of arts. Get the youth group even more involved. They've just gone from 2 groups to 3 groups. They've got a waiting list. They're They are such a great group. They really are. The enthusiasm they breed within the youngsters in the theatre is fantastic. They do a wonderful job. And having a brand new purpose-built studio with proper catering facilities and toilets and things like that will make a massive difference to them.
Despite the concerns and anxieties, the Talisman entered the next decade in high spirits once again. Their first 2 shows of 2020, Witness for the Prosecution and Annie Jr., were both very successful. But as we're all painfully aware, this success was about to come to a sudden stop. In March 2020, the UK government issued a nationwide lockdown, leading to the closing of every theatre and live performance venue across the country. The Talisman's live productions were put on hold, and the theatre was closed for the foreseeable future. But if there's one thing we've learned on this journey, it's that the Talisman is nothing if not adaptable. The theatre may have been placed in hibernation, but the Talisman players were anything but dormant.
It all happened so quickly. If you remember, it was March and the shutdown, and we had a weekend, and everybody's out drinking, and then on the Monday, bang, shut down. The streets were empty. Everything was shut down. We were homeschooling, none of the school, and everything was just it was a real shock. Anyway, the following week I got an email from Smith Scripps, Paul Smith, and he said, look, we know what's going on. There's no performances, there's no nothing, but if anybody wants script, he said, if you make a donation to the NHS, I will give you a script free of charge, including the performance rights. And I looked at it and I thought, well, what if we did a short 10-minute play, really short, audio, and we put it on YouTube? We could do it and we could record it online, and we could get round this way and keep the members involved and keep something going. I spoke to Richard Crump. Crumpy came on board, and as ever, incredibly positive, enthusiastic. Yeah, we can do this. And so I said, listen, let's hang on. Let's just, I'll try and find a script, see if there's something suitable. Found something suitable. Made a donation to the NHS, I think it was £10, and I said, I got the script, and I shared it with Richard, and we said, we can do this. He said, but we must check it out with the exec, and I said, absolutely. So sent a message to the exec, and I think there were some, I'm not sure, and there was some fantastic, this is a great idea, let's just do it. I mean, at least it's better than sitting on your hands and doing nothing.
We jumped at it.
I think so, yes.
We jumped at it.
I think we'd have been climbing up the wall last year without anything to do, to be honest with you.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think we realised when we first agreed it, because, of course, we've been doing virtually a play a week, that it would be quite so much work. Because, Stephen was talking about the number of plays that you read. Well, although these are only 15, 20-minute plays, we have read one heck of a lot of plays, haven't we?
we get them a dozen at a time.
Yeah, we get a dozen at a time.
And within a week, we rehearsed it. I'd found the script in 1 week, cast it, rehearsed it, recorded it, and it went out the following Friday. So it really was seat of your pants.
This was the first Tea with the Tally production. These audio plays may seem unprecedented, but much like the Palace of Varieties, the Studio Saturday Nights, or the Bare Bones productions, the Tea with the Tally plays are the result of ingenuity in the face of extraordinary circumstances, and it seems that they're set to be a part of the Talisman's repertoire going forward.
We've had I think it's about 20 of our more senior members who no longer tread the boards have been thrilled to get involved and record a play with us, just a 10-minute play, and it's worked an absolute treat. So it does appeal. It gives the youth group opportunities of doing something they wouldn't normally do. It has definitely broadened the opportunity for our members to do something, get back involved and do something artistic again. And we've been proud of that. It's something you should be proud of. This is why we hope it carries on.
What also has been great is that we've had new people, both in directing and performing, which is great for the future, because they've got a taste of doing something small. So we can now enlarge on that, hopefully.
And we've had people say, I really enjoyed it. People who've not done it before say, I really enjoyed doing that. I'd like to have a go at a play on stage, which is fantastic news for us, because we're always conscious that a lot of directors are in the older group, you know, because of the nature of the membership and everything and experience. But what we want to do is bring on a lot more younger people. So
Well, that's it. We're all caught up. Whatever the future holds for the Talisman, her past has certainly been eventful. Not entirely for the best, but then what theatre would be complete without a little drama? We hope you've enjoyed our journey through the Talisman story, its ups and downs, its laugh-out-loud moments, and all the characters who have made it special. One day soon, the Talisman will be open again. And when that day comes, we hope to see you there.
Whilst March 2020 saw the theatre close to public performance, the trustees and executive committee decided to take advantage of the closure to push on with the planned building works. There were endless meetings redesigning the building to accommodate stage crossover, best use of the space for dressing rooms, getting building regulation approval, and, in addition, many hours were spent raising funds to obtain grants in order to be able to carry out this work. In addition to this, much time was spent making applications to gain the government COVID funding grants, and indeed grants to fund projects like Tea with the Tally. And in the latter stages, we have turned our minds to adding ventilation to the auditorium, again to improve the well-being of both our customers and our volunteers. We have also managed to keep the youth group running on a regular basis, and we've had meetings of our executive committee and our trustees online on a regular basis. We also held an online members briefing earlier in 2021. So, although to the outside world the theatre seemed to be shut, many people have spent many hours trying to ensure that we have a sound and secure future, and ensuring that we keep the Talisman spirit alive.